Good evening. I am going to resume and call this meeting to order from the May 15th meeting. I just want to say that during public question period at the May 15th, 2023 board meeting, ongoing disruptions from members of the public gallery made it unfeasible to continue the proceedings. In order to move the business of the board forward, the public gallery was cleared so the meeting could continue. The board did not attend to all items on the agenda, but as required by our DDSB bylaws, the meeting concluded at 11 p.m. with the decision to a continuation board meeting scheduled for today, May 23rd. According to the board, meeting continuation will resume under the same conditions that were in place at the conclusion of the May 15th meeting, including no in-person involvement for members of the public. It is also important to note that no new business has been added to the agenda for this evening. As with all board and standing committee meetings, the DDSB invites those who choose to view the May 23rd board meeting to do so through the available live stream options. So where we left off in the agenda was item 11D. We were still discussing and going through the revised consolidated bylaws. And the section that we were working on was section 6 of filling trustee vacancies, which was found on page 41 of your old agenda as far as the page numbers were concerned. So we will continue this process as far as we will go through the sections one by one, and we will vote on those particular sections. Trustees can either approve or make amendments to the amendments, or basically, again, ask for a particular section to refer back to committee. Again, it's at the will of the board. Okay, so we are on section 6, filling trustee vacancies. I will pass it over to Council Cotter to just explain some of the amendments that are being proposed, and then we will have discussion and voting. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. So, Section 6 deals with filling a trustee vacancy in the event that a trustee seat is vacated during the term. So, under the Education Act, the Board of Trustees it decides how to fill that vacancy. So this bylaw just implements the provisions of the Education Act in terms of the board's filling of that vacancy. We went through this a couple of times in the last term of the board, and as a result, this is just sort of some cleanup to try to clarify a few things that we felt were a little bit ambiguous in the process. So it's really just a cleanup, a streamlining of the bylaw. So section 6.2.1 just confirms that the director is to prepare a report setting out the options for how the board wishes to proceed, and that report would include the results from the previous election for the electoral area and the cost of a by-election if the board wanted to proceed in that. So it's just sort of a bit of a rearrangement. We always did bring a report to the board anyway, but this confirms it, and it's listed up front in the bylaw that sort of starts the process. So those are the only changes to 6.2.1.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that Trustee Brown is going to basically move the amendments on section 6.21. Okay, I have a seconder, Trustee Morton. Discussion, any questions? Looking online. Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I have a point of order on similar to the one that I raised prior, although this time I have Robert's rules to cite regarding how we should be proceeding with amending the bylaw. So I looked at Robert's rules, and I'm looking specifically at section 57, which is amendments of bylaws. And when we are amending bylaws, there are two ways to do it: through isolated changes and general revisions. A general revision reads as follows: changes of the bylaws that are so extensive and general that they are scattered throughout the bylaws should be effected through the substitution of an entirely new set of bylaws called a revision. And that is what we are doing. As well, in section 57.6, procedure of consideration, it reads as follows: a revision of bylaws or a lengthy amendment involving more than one section should be considered seriatim as described in section 28. So let's go to section 28 of Robert's Rules. Section 28 is called consideration by paragraph or seriatim, and section 28.1 reads as follows: a report or long motion consisting of a series of resolutions, paragraphs, articles, or sections that are not totally debatable questions can be considered by opening the different parts to debate an amendment separately. And Chair, this is the important part: without a division of the question. Furthermore, section 28.6 clarifies further that the procedure in considering by paragraph or seriatim is as follows: the presiding officer reads the first subdivision and it is explained by its proponent. When there is no further debate or amendment, each succeeding one is taken up. Amendments are voted on, specifically amendments are voted on, not the whole thing, as they arise, but no paragraph as amended is acted upon as to final adoption at that time. Accordingly, I do not think that we should be voting on individual sections, and instead we should only be taking up amendments to different parts and then considering the whole bylaw at the end.
Councillor Cotter.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. So, as a general concept, I don't have Roberts in front of me, but I think as a general concept, the review of the bylaws in the manner that Student Trustee Cameron has described is acceptable, and I think that is what we are doing. I guess the only, as I understand his complaint, is that we are actually voting section by section, but I think that just shows, are we good with that before we move on to the next section? And then I think we did contemplate that we would vote on the whole package at the end once it's done. So I think I would agree, Student Trustee Cameron, that we go through section by section, deal with the amendments, and that we are going to do, I think Chair Edwards and I talked about it, we would do a final vote at the end in any event on the package. So I think the only complaint you're making is if there is no amendment, then we wouldn't vote. And I don't, as long as we do a vote at the end, I don't have any concerns with skipping the vote if there is no amendment. But I think we were just trying to make sure that we were clear that people were fine to move on. But I think as long as you're comfortable with that approach, Chair Edwards, I wouldn't have a concern with just making sure there's no further comments and we can move on to the next section. Have I got that? Have I encapsulated your concern, Student Trustee Cameron?
Yes, thank you. I think it was just around, yes, the voting, that we shouldn't be voting as well. There's no need for a mover and a seconder.
Thank you for that information. And one of the things that I want to ensure, as far as this information has been put out to the public, and there has been concerns about certain sections, etc. I have no problem about not doing a vote, but these are amendments to our bylaws. And I want to make it quite clear through to the public what we are doing here and what sections we are voting on. That is the way, the process that I have been carrying this out, and to ensure that concerns around, especially some of the emails that we serve, that we are addressing each section and we are voting on each section. Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think I heard Council Cotter say we're going to do section by section and then vote at the end on the package, the whole bylaws. So my question, through you, Chair, is what then happens to the sections that were referred back to governance and policy, or will be, yeah, that's my question.
And that, again, is one of the reasons why I was proposing to do it this way, because it makes it quite clear that we voted on those sections that are deferred, they stay deferred, that doesn't change the vote, and that we have to, otherwise, we have to keep track on the final version of the final vote. We would have to say, we approve section such and such, such and such, such and such, as, and then we deferred this, or we changed this, and that motion is quite a large motion. Council Cotter.
Through you, Chair Edwards, and as you say, we have done that now through each of the bylaws. We have voted separately, and the reality is we're almost through. I think at this point, just for consistency's sake, we've already hived off some of the sections, referred them to committee. I think my recommendation is that we just continue. We've started this path. We continue so that we don't have to go back last meeting in a wrap-up vote. So we just continue. We finish with, we only have 2 sections left. I think substantive changes, 6 and 9 primarily, and we're finished. So I think it's quicker just to move on and continue the path you've taken would be my recommendation. I think, Chair Edwards, which is where you're leaning, so I would agree with your approach.
Thank you, and that's basically where I was leaning to at this point in time. It just makes this much more clear for our public and for our trustees here and where we left off. So at this point in time, we were dealing with section 6.2.1, and I asked for any comments or questions. I'm seeing none. So I will again call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your check mark clearly so that we can see. Anybody opposed? That motion carries. Okay, those amendments carry. So we're moving on to section 6.2.2. It's quite a long section, but again, it seems to be cleanup, but I'll again pass it on to Council Cotter.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. Yeah, 6.2.2 then deals with the appointments, and there's either appoint one of the unsuccessful candidates from the last municipal election or consider a broader range of electors for appointment. And really what follows then, that's at the top of section 42, that's 6.2.2 sub 2. And then the rest of what follows is that process. So how would the board appoint somebody if they didn't go with the results of the last election? So this lays out the application process and the meeting process. And primarily, the changes are dealing with the meeting process, the actual meeting itself, confirming that it's a special board meeting, and eliminating the requirements that it had to be done on a Monday and completed. The interviews had to be done by 4:30. So just to allow the board to have a special board meeting to conduct those interviews and building in some more flexibility, and then. So those are the gist of the changes, and they're set out page 42 through to page 45 of the package.
I am going to again assume that Trustee Brown is going to put that motion forward. A seconder, please. Trustee Thompson, any discussion on section 6.2.2? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the amendments? Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to section 9, basically, which is the election of student trustees. I'm going to again pass that over to Council Cotter.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. So Section 9 is essentially a complete rewrite of the student election or the election of student trustee process. So I don't intend to go through it in any great detail. I would suggest if trustees have questions, they could ask it, and perhaps the student trustees might be able to provide insight into any questions they may have. This was an amendment that was brought forward by the student trustees through governance. That's a summary of the changes. They're found on page 46 through to page, the new section anyways, 46 through 49. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am looking, before we get into discussions, and as far as this point in time, again, I'm looking for somebody to put it onto the floor as the amendments. Trustee Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I put the motion on the floor.
Thank you, and I have a seconder for those, Trustee Linton. Now I will open for discussion, and I see student trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. Is it your intention to vote on each section in this part of the bylaw amendments individually?
No, it was not. It was to go through the whole section. It's a total rewrite, and one relates to the other.
Excellent.
Any other comments? Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. I definitely cannot support the revised consolidated bylaw, Section 9, student trustee elections, in particular, Stage 3, the board-wide election. The DDSB consists of 7 municipalities, 4 of which are urban, 3 are rural. Each of those 7 municipalities has a distinct culture. We differ along many lines, and we respect each other and the different points of view. We need to have student trustee voices who represent as many areas as possible. With this revised bylaw, with the board-wide election, some areas could receive the majority of student representation, while other areas are completely excluded. We need to be fair. Being fair should mean equal representation from all areas of our board. We cannot have 7 student trustees. That would not be allowed. But we can make sure that Oshawa Whitby has a voice, the North has a voice, and the students of Pickering Ajax have a voice. All students in all areas of our secondary schools need to know that they have a student trustee who understands their circumstances and will advocate on their behalf. That is being fair and respectful of all secondary school students in Durham. I also want to point out that timing is not a critical factor here, as we are talking about student trustee elections in the year 2024. Hence, I want to put forward a motion.
Go ahead, trustee.
And the motion, and I think we have it, it could be put up on the board, that the board refer Section 9 of the consolidated bylaws back to the Governance and Policy Committee for further consideration and ask staff to prepare a report for the committee on the potential impact of the proposed amendment on area representation.
We have
And it's on the board.
We have a motion on it. Can we, seconder? Trustee Cunningham? Okay, we are now speaking to the motion that is on the screen, that the boards refer Section 9 of the consolidated bylaws back to governance and policy for further consideration, and that staff prepare a report. Everybody can read it there. That is the motion that we are now discussing. And I have Trustee Cunningham.
I agree. Everyone here is here representing a specific area, and so I also think that it's important to send this back to bylaw or the governance committee to make sure that student trustees get the same, or students get the same representation from their student trustees as residents of each of these cities and towns.
Do I have any other speakers on the item? Student trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I am not very happy about this. This went to governance in March and it passed. And frankly, this is really good for students. The amendments to the new student trustee election process. The old system was bogged down in bad, in ties, in lack of student representation, in lottery instead of elections and democracy. this is really important. It is about making sure that all students, no matter where they are being represented. That's what it is about, because students are going to vote for the student trustee candidate that they think can best represent the students wherever they may be from. Frankly, we need to open up our eyes to what good representation looks like. I would just like to bring up a very current examples from the recent student trustee election. I am only back at this board table because I won a coin toss. The candidate in Ajax who I beat also got to the final election because of a coin toss. In the North, we had one candidate, and that candidate quit before her term started. And that is not their fault. It is symptomatic of a system that we have. And as was mentioned, timing is very important. As Superintendent Davis could attest, it's a lot of work to run a student trustee election, and it starts right in the new year. As we've pushed back the dates from last year, now we're starting in February, and everything needs to get going. As trustees can see, there's 3 stages. It does take time, but this time is crucial to the process of electing our student trustees. And so students are gonna vote for the person that they think is the best to represent, whether they're from Pickering, whether they're from Scugog. We need to move into the 21st century, okay, of student trustee representation. Every other board across the province does not take in geographic representation, especially as disproportionately as we do. So I will urge trustees to vote no against this. This is well thought out. This was approved and endorsed by the Student Senate and students across the board. They want good student representation, and this is what that brings. So I will urge trustees to vote no against this.
I have Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I think for me, knowing again that governance meeting was very, very long and very detailed, and that this was something that was discussed for quite a long time, that there's a number of things in here that this motion to defer isn't quite clear to me in terms of what exactly we're talking about, because some of this had to do with, the nomination, and then there was the election portion, there was the division of the point system, so that was different, and it was explained to us at that meeting because it was a new process for me, as well as how it works currently versus how it is to work. I don't really understand what exactly from the existing needs to then be deferred and relooked at. If it's the entire thing in its entirety, I have a harder time agreeing with that, because I think some of the amendments are quite good and fulsome and more accessible for students, and we heard that because of the student trustees, they brought that from Student Senate. And then some of the other logistical pieces in terms of cost and whether schools get a number of votes or whether every student gets a vote, those are very fundamental pieces of like a democratic student election process. And full disclosure, when I was a student, I didn't know what student trustees were because it was such a guarded thing. You were either in or you weren't. And so I think that would certainly, like parts of this I'm thinking would certainly open up if every student had a vote and had to look at their potential candidates, whether it be in their area or not. I think that's an important ode to democracy and sort of a test run. And so I would benefit from more clarification what exactly in this particular bylaw needs to be amended or relooked at if we were to defer it, because I think there are some really great things in here, and this is a little bit too broad for me to then go sit another X amount of hours going over things when I'd just like to be intentional. I just want to better understand what exactly needs to be relooked at here if we were to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm not trying to put words in Trustee Morton's mouth as far as, but I think that's why maybe the report from staff is being asked in order to have that better understanding, because it is a full rewrite of the section and what the, as I said, what the connectivity between these things, because it could be section, she particularly had, her understanding was section 3, but they all intertwine very much to each other, so it's a matter of having a better understanding of the full impact. If I'm, sorry, I shouldn't have, Trustee Morton, just so you can clarify. Oh, okay. So Trustee Pinello, any further comment?
Sorry, thank you. I was just going to ask, because I do think that a report was brought forward with this amendment when it came forward. And so I'm looking for maybe clarification, because there was a report that was done on this, and it was initially deferred, and then we addressed it in March, but there was something. So whether it was a letter, a summary, a report, I'm not sure, but I don't expect you to answer that right now, Chair. I don't know, but I thought that when the student trustees brought this forward, that there was a report that was like statistics or something that were done to go alongside it.
Yes, and I understand that, and that was from, I believe we did have from students, sort of the background of where this is coming from, and some of the inequities that they had seen and represented, and Trustee Cameron did, but it wasn't staff in this particular. She's looking, from staff, but that's. And student trustee Ben Cameron, I think you will also have the background of exactly the process, if you could just address that as far as that's concerned. And I also have a student trustee. I think student trustee Cameron did have his hand up first, though, online. And then I'll go to student trustee Gwen Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the report, we did present a report. It was more of an analysis, I would say, on what the new system would look like. And I don't know who still has access to that, but that was given to everyone at the governance meeting. And I would also add that we spent over an hour discussing this at the governance committee. And you know what? I would be happy to do it again, but I don't think any of the trustees want to spend another hour tonight doing that. And I'd say this is what students want. And further, a report from staff on the potential impact of the proposed amendment, that is not going to contain anything other than what's already in the bylaw. Right? Like, it's just going to say, the students are going to be elected board-wide, no matter where they're from, which is going to provide them good student representation. That there's not much else to be had from that. Additionally, I would just like to comment quickly on the student trustee election processes from across the province and how we've seen when students get to vote, they do vote and they get engaged at the board. And that leads to good student representation as well. I know around 3,000 students voted in Halton this past year. Thousands of students from across the province are voting, and we limit ourselves to less than, I think it's around 200 from across the board when we have 77,000 students. This system isn't working as it is, and delay is not going to do anything for us.
Thank you, student trustee Ben Cameron. I'm going to student trustee Gwen Hewitt.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. From what I'm understanding, I think we're concerned about staff perspective as well. I would just like trustees to note that we made these amendments with staff. We worked with our superintendents and our staff advisors, so staff did have a say on these bylaw amendments. I also want to echo Trustee Pinello that I'm not really sure either, so maybe a point of clarification at some point what exactly we are going to discuss other than a report. Because this has passed governance once, it's well thought out. We've worked really hard on these amendments. And like Student Trustee Cameron said, we need to move past geographic election processes. There are students across Durham that are eager to represent their peers, and they shouldn't have to lose that opportunity just because we're holding a spot for another region when there's no one from that region who's willing to fill it. So once again, this is Student Senate's voice. Student Senate includes students from the north. And some of the student senators don't even know like what region each of us are, but still they see all three of us as accurate representation, regardless of whether you're from Pickering, Ajax, Port Perry, Uxbridge, Scugog. It doesn't matter what region you're from, because all three of us are doing the same job at the end of the day. So we need to stop segregating these students by their geographic location. And that's not just my opinion, that's the opinion backed by Student Senate as well. And we need to act for our students, not for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to speak against referring it back for the reasons that Trustee Pinello spoke to. But I also think that it's concerning. I mean, if the goal is to have greater representation, better engagement of students in the process, then I think that it's something that should go forward. It's a bylaw. It doesn't have to exist forever. I think that if Student Senate and the student trustees feel that this is a good suggestion, a good way to improve things, that we should trust them on that. They've worked on it with staff and with trustees, and I think that we should respect that and at least give it a try. I mean, when the elections are done next time, there's an opportunity to review how that process went, and bylaws can be amended yet again if there's a need to amend bylaws. So I speak against referring it back.
Thank you. I'm moving on to Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We're talking about the level of student trustee engagement, and I want to think, I've been spending some time thinking of the responsibilities of student trustees and how they can be engaged. I want you to know that student trustees representing the North could have a drive of 1 hour one way. That is a huge commitment. And I don't think that we can expect student trustees to attend all the meetings. And I'm a little bit concerned that the student trustee that was recently elected from the North has already withdrawn, because I'm thinking, why would that be? Is it the level of commitment? We have to respect everybody's voice, and we have to be fair. Keep in mind that some student trustees could have a 10-minute drive, others a 20-minute drive, but others a 60-minute drive. There is a difference. Thank you.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think it is normal for elections to be held based on geographic location. I think I would be uncomfortable if I did not have representatives for Pickering on the school board, on the Ontario government, on the federal government, because I expect elected officials to know what's happening on the ground and in those local areas. I know that when issues come up at certain schools, one of the first things that happens is that trustees in that specific area are notified, so that when parents start to contact us, we have that information more quickly. And I do think that there are differences. I know that I would not be happy if every trustee on this board was from Oshawa or was from Brock. I think the fact that we all have those different perspectives matters. And we all have a variety of world lived experiences and a variety of different places that we're coming from, but we also know our communities. And I think it's important to get that perspective from the students on this board as well.
Thank you. Trustee Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I too don't believe that this should come back to governance. I think we should listen to the students. They're the ones doing this, and I believe, if I'm correct, Gwen, that you have your student senate as well, which is a full representation. I think we should listen to them. If they feel that this is the way forward for them, well, to me, that's the right answer. Because I think we already have representation. I understand it for us to have representation for each of the communities, but I think as long as the trustees that are elected ensures that they listen to their student senate, well then Durham is covered. And I think that's what I heard loud and clear in the governance meeting. So I'm not on the student senate, so they'll have to tell you. But I don't believe this should come back. Maybe, just a consideration, I don't think I want to amend the motion so much, but I think what's coming out loud and clear, Trustee Morton, is that you don't feel that this is inclusive enough. Because, is that correct? And maybe that's something we should look at, and I don't know how that's done. It may be in the wording. Thank you.
Thank you, and you know, questions will come through the chair just as far as, and not to other trustees, and so if you want that question answered, I can ask that question of the floor, but do you care to respond, Trustee Morton, as far as? Okay, thank you. She is willing to leave the motion as it is. So we are any other people that have not spoken on this motion at this point in time? I think we've already heard student trustees. Is there anybody else who has not spoken on this motion? I'm just looking. I don't see Lauren's hand up. She is there.
It's not up, but
Yeah.
I would like to hear her thought.
I'm not going to put a trustee on the spot, but if student trustee Lauren Added wishes to speak, if she could indicate so. Okay, and what she said she'd love to, but she's lost her voice. And that's basically she's she's not feeling well at this point in time. Student trustee Cameron, if I'm going to let you speak, as I said, everybody else has spoken, and you've spoken twice on this particular deferral of the motion. Unless you can add a specific point, I've seen you speak twice. So I'm going to actually call the vote on this particular motion. What is the deferral, okay, that the board refer section 8 of, referral to the governance committee. All those in favor?
Chair, could we get a recorded vote, please?
Again, if have a student trustee ask for a recorded vote. Councillor Cotter?
I think, our bylaws do not segregate that out, and student trustees, while at the board table, do have the same rights as members. So I would be reluctant to split hairs. If a student trustee wants a recorded vote, I would let it go to a recorded vote. And I do. I think, I'm just thinking of our bylaws, but I think the Education Act, the regulations on student trustees does allow them to put a recorded vote.
And I believe so too. So
yeah.
I'm just, okay, so
Sorry,
we'll have a
working through that.
record.
So yes, I would recommend allow the recorded vote.
I'm trying to go through the pages of my head as far as the Education Act. So it's a recorded vote. So I ask the recording secretary, Jillian, to go through the recorded vote process. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with Trustee Brown.
Opposed?
Trustee Cunningham?
In favor.
Trustee Linton?
In favor.
Trustee Miller?
In favor.
Trustee Morton?
In favor?
Trustee Oldfield?
Opposed?
Trustee Pinillo?
Opposed.
Trustee Thatcher?
Opposed?
Trustee Thompson?
Opposed?
And Trustee Edwards?
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at pushing my button to speak, I'm sorry. And I'm opposed.
And through the chair, I will now call the student trustee non-binding vote. Student trustee Ben Cameron?
Opposed.
Student trustee Lauren Edwards?
She can't speak, and I'm just, if she wanted to put it in the chat, if she wants.
Student trustee Edwards has confirmed she is opposed in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
And student trustee Gwen Hewitt?
Opposed.
Thank you. So we have 4 trustees in favor, 6 trustees opposed, and 3 student trustees opposed.
Yeah, I'm just doing my math in my head, bad math skills. 7 out of 11 is, it would be, that would pass, and so this was 6. So that motion is defeated, thank you. Sorry, that motion is carries.
Sorry.
No,
so I
it's
think,
defeated.
Sorry, through you, Chair Edwards. So I think a motion to refer it to committee would be on a majority basis, but in any event, there was 6,
Yeah.
regardless of the threshold, there was 6 opposed to the motion to refer. So the motion to refer has failed, so
Yes.
we're back to the
the
main
original.
motion considering the amendments to section 9.
Yeah, so I had it right originally, defeated. These double negatives really get me to me, I don't know. Anyways, so we're basically back to the original motion, which is the amendments on, that have been proposed in the report, in your agenda, starting on page 46. So the section 9 for student trustees. Are there any further comments on the original motion? So it's all the amendments starting for section 9, starting on 46 to, I'm looking at 50,
To 49 is the amendments, then after
Yeah.
49, it's through you, Chair Edwards, after 49, it's the strikeouts.
yeah, this is the strikeout, so from 46 to 49. Any other comments? Seeing none, then I will call the vote for the amendments to section 9. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. I believe that is the end of the bylaws amendments. That's end of 11D. We are now looking at item 11E, which is the rescission of legal opinions, policy, and regulations. I'm going to go to Trustee Brown. Or Trustee, actually, Council Cotter, because I think we had already established the process as far as this is. So Council Cotter, just sort of a review of the item D, revision of, the rescission of legal opinions, policy and regulation.
Thank you, Chair Edwards, and through you. So we have a legal opinions policy and a legal opinions regulation. both of which we are recommending be rescinded. Both of these documents did go to the Governance and Policy Committee and are coming before you as a recommendation from that committee. It's a one-line policy, is found on page 93, and a one-line policy found on page 94. These are, the policy was created in 1970. It is operational in nature, and also has some ambiguous language about legal advice to individual trustees. And then there is a regulation as well, which is created in 1982, and is problematic for some of the same reasons, and also, incorporates the BPSA, which is not, in our view, appropriate, given that legal services are exempt from the BPSA. So subject to any questions you may have, that is the report.
Do I have any questions as far as the rescission of the policy? If not, I'm going to ask that, again, I'm assuming that Trustee Brown is going to put the motion to rescind the legal opinions policy and regulation that you can find on page 91. Are you seconding it, Trustee Pinello? So she has seconded it. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Now we're moving on to F, rescission of the school operations policies and regulations. Again, Council Cotter.
That actually was a report that was originally delivered to governance through Associate Director Markovsky, I think. Jim, if you, or Chair Edwards, if you wanted to refer that to Associate Director Markovsky.
Okay, Associate Director Markovsky, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, the report begins on page 95 of the package, and the purpose of the report is to bring forward recommendations that came forward from the Governance and Policy Committee to rescind selected policies and regulations that fall under school operations. There are 5 in total, 2 of them that are specific to the appointment and transfer of staff in the position of principal and vice principal and officers, currently known as system leads. Much of the language within that policy and regulation are captured within the terms and conditions for principals and vice principals. There is 1 policy specific to the duties and responsibilities of principals and vice principals. We would describe that policy as outdated. Much of the language is captured within the Education Act, and there are also terms and conditions for Ps and VPs that we sign with the Provincial Association, OPC. And then finally, there are 2 additional documents, policy and regulation on professional activity days, which again we would describe as outdated. The information is captured under Regulation 304. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so I'm assuming again, Trustee Brown, that you're going to put the motion to rescind the policies and regulations outlined in Appendix A on page 96 to 97 of the agenda package, and that the policy and regulation appointment transfers and positions of principals, vice principals, and officers, the policy principals and vice principal duties and responsibility, and the policy and regulation professional activity days. So that is, Trustee Brown has put it forward. I have a seconder. Trustee Thatcher, any questions? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item G, the rescission of youth and adult student engagement and success grades 7 to 12 plus policy regulations. Am I going to turn this to Superintendent Markovsky or, oh, sorry, Superintendent Stephen Nevels, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. There are 4 policies and their corresponding regulations that we're bringing forward this evening for rescinding. The first is the co-op education in secondary schools policy, which was created in 1971 with the goal of co-op existing at all of our secondary schools, and we've more than met that goal. The second policy, also created in 1974, had the goal of ensuring that schools had access to instrumental music. We have also met that goal. And then the next two policies, the daily physical activity policy, which was created in 2006, has now recently been recaptured within the ministry PPM 138. And the materials for personal projects policy, created in 1970, is also captured within our other policies and procedures, and as well within a ministry directive. So putting forward that those policies and the corresponding regulations be rescinded at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, so the motion again is the motion to rescind the policy and regulation pertaining to youth and adult students' engagement and success, grades 7 to 12 plus, as listed on page 106 to 107 and outlined in Appendix A of your agenda package. So Trustee Brown, I have a seconder. Trustee Oldfield. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. That is it for recommended actions. We're moving on to information items. And the first item is Special Education Advisory Committee report. Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This is a report from the Special Education Advisory Committee meeting of March 23rd. And just to highlight a couple of items in the report, at page 118 of your agenda, staff reported on the mental health and well-being. So well-being and mental health and learning are intertwined in supporting students as we move policy into practice as a district. The Durham District School Board's 2022 to 2025 Mental Health and Wellbeing Action Plan recognizes that good mental health is an important foundation for achievement and well-being. The plan reflects the district's commitment to cultivate the conditions for healthy learning and working environments where all our students and staff feel they are welcomed, and where students in particular are engaged in school life, both in their classroom learning and the larger school, where they know they are valued, seen, and heard, where their identities are affirmed, where they belong and know they matter, and are connected to adults that care and are present to their lived realities. Also, page 122, I wanted to highlight the inclusive culinary competition. The Culinary Arts Department at Uxbridge Secondary School hosted an inclusive culinary competition for students from 15 different schools. All competitors access learning through the practical learning program. The recipes were shared with classroom teams ahead of the competition day, and upon arrival, students were outfitted with personalized chef jackets. The competitors had 2 hours working alongside peer mentors to complete 3 recipes while being cheered on by a full gallery of family members and support staff. The day was filled with connections, skills, and the smell of delicious and creative baking. I also wanted to highlight just below that, starting on page 122, transition to work. The transition to work program is designed to bridge between school and successful adult living by providing experiences in various work environments. The goal of the program is to develop employability skills and foster independence to support students with special needs to become productive workers with the goal of leading to meaningful paid employment. Through this program placement, students with special education needs can learn, practice, and refine productivity skills and social skills that are essential to participating in meaningful employment, learning more about both themselves and the world of work. Each program class for up to 12 students is supported by a teacher and 2 educational assistants, and there are currently 5 transition to work program classes at the DDSB. And then a couple of other things, and I did read this out at a previous board meeting, but this is part of the report from March 23rd. Under community concerns, the committee had asked that a motion, or they had passed a motion that a trustee read out their concerns, and that was that CEC has become aware of harm directed at the transgender community in particular, as well as the broader 2SL LGBTQIA+ community that has occurred recently. As a ministry-mandated committee comprised of representatives for associations that support students and families of marginalized students with special education needs, SEAC would like to reiterate our commitment to advocating for school environments that are welcoming, respectful, safe, inclusive, equitable, accessible, and free from all forms of discrimination, harassment, racism, oppression, and harm for all of our staff and students. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight another issue, which was the Legacy Ontario Autism Program, which has ended, and that was also one of the concerns coming out of that committee in terms of what that means for those students and whether or not there'll be adequate supports for those students as they enter into our schools. And I move that we accept this report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have a motion to receive the report. And I have a seconder, Trustee Cunningham. Any questions for, okay, Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have a comment and a question. I was certainly very impressed with the changes around the IEP information, the opportunities. So first of all, the field that now includes not only the strengths and needs of students, but also their interests, which I think is a great opportunity for them to make connections in their programming. Also, the encouraging students to attend their IPRC meeting, I think that's excellent as well. My question is, though, around the implementation and the training of that. I'm just wondering, is there a plan for the implementation and training of these new changes to the IEP?
Yeah, I would say Superintendent Andrew McCauley. Can I call upon you?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I appreciate the question. So the new program launched with the IPRC process, where all of the reviews this spring have been occurring within the new software program, and we're just finishing up testing on all of the other forms. We will be rolling out training as schools start up for the 23-24 school year on all of the new forms, so that we will have both information on-demand sessions so that staff can have a training session running on one screen and press and play and pause as they work through a process, but also have live working sessions with support for certs so that they're able to take that information back into their school teams and support as well. And then our inclusive student services team members, such as facilitators, will be able to be out in schools supporting at that time as well. I think that staff will find the new system quite easy to use once in. And together with IT, so I'd really like to give credit to the Information Technology Department for being part of the planning. A lot of data is being migrated from our current software over into the new software. And then with it being integrated into our student information systems, a lot of the information will already be there for school teams, integrated directly in rather than needing to be re-entered as currently present. So the forms will all link together, such as information, as you referenced, Trustee Thatcher, strengths, needs, interests, will transfer from the IPRC form directly into the IEP form as well.
Supplemental, or you're fine? Thank you. Any other questions around the CF report? Thank you. All those in favor, actually, I forgot to do that because to receive that report. Opposed? I know it's an information item, but there was two basically points that were presented that SEAC that they wanted their statements to be read out. So I put in and I basically received it for information. Thank you. Moving on to 12B, which is the OPSPA report.
I have no meeting report at this meeting.
Thank you. Then moving on to item 13 was the dates of significance. And For your information, you can be found on page 127. We have 2 memos that were in our package. The first memo was around Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee plan. Is there any questions around that particular memo? Trustee Linton.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just wondering if the creation of this committee is now kind of where the anti-black racism work has gone. Has it been rolled into the Equity and Diversity Committee?
Associate Director Markowski.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So Trustee Linton, in terms of the actual mandate of the committee, they will be making policy recommendations to the board. I would assume that within discussions that there may be discussions in terms of our policies and practices in relation to anti-black racism. I don't want to speak on behalf of the work of the actual committee itself, but I could absolutely see some intersection in those conversations to the committee.
I'm Director Camille Williams-Taylor. Would like to add some more information. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just one more point of clarification is that while it is that there may be some intersections with the new and emerging committee, because this committee, the Equity Diversity Advisory Committee, is intended to be connected to the policy, our human rights and anti-oppression policy. The existing task force action group around anti-black racism continues to exist. And so it will continue to do its work, as evidenced by the Living Compendium event from last week. The work continues. There was there were many recommendations from the community around next steps and ongoing work, and that action group will continue to do its work separate and apart from the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee. They're intended to be 2 separate pieces.
Any further questions on that memo? If not, we'll move on to the next memo, which is basically vetting of public presentations and questions. Any questions on that memo? It was given separately at the previous meeting as a amendment to that, so I'm hoping people still have access to it.
Chair Edwards, and through you, I should note that the memo does speak to 2 of the sections of the bylaws that have gone back to governance, and we did include the memo in the governance package as well. So trustees, to the extent they haven't had a chance to review it in anticipation of tonight's meeting, it will be before the committee tomorrow, before the governance committee as well. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for that. All right, so that's the last memo. So we have come to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Cunningham, Trustee Linton. Oh, Trustee Pinello, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I just wanted to, we were just mentioning, do we have to vote on the entire bylaw grouping to approve the decisions or something as a group after going through it piece by piece?
No, and through you, Chair Edwards, we did, notwithstanding Trustee Cameron's position, the chair took the position that we were voting on each section as we went. And so in my opinion, there's no need for a wrap-up vote. Each of those sections that were approved as amended or as drafted, and certain sections were referred to committee. So in my opinion, given the way that that's unfolded, nothing more is required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Okay, so we've had a first and seconder. All those in favor to adjourn? Thank you.